Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to another session of Indian Economy Essentials. And in today's video, let's try and understand what is this idea or the concept of MSP, why it has been increased by the government very recently, and this hike in the MSP, is it going to provide any benefit to the farmers? Now, let's start with the basics first. What is the concept of MSP? MSP stands for minimum support price. Minimum support price. Now, what is this minimum support price? Minimum support price is that amount or the money that will be paid by the government whenever they procure the food grain from the farmers. Simple. The government will procure the food grains and the money that the government will pay, it is called as MSP. Government of India introduced the concept of MSP back in 1960s, specifically 66-67, because at that point of time, there was introduction of Green Revolution, and with that idea, there was a concern that the farmers, they would increase the supply because the production would be higher, and when the supply would increase, the market prices would crash. In order to provide certain support to the farmers, the idea or the concept of minimum support price was actually introduced. Now, Government of India, to be very specific here, Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, CCEA, Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, decides or approves the MSP. It decides or approves the minimum support price for more than 20 crops. More than 20 crops. Some sources say 23, some sources say 24. Don't worry, it is more than 20. And the Cabinet Committee of Economic Affairs will receive a recommendation of MSP. Will receive the recommendation of MSP from another authority, Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices, CACP. And the Commission of Agriculture Cost and Prices, based on various factors such as what would be the supply and the demand for these commodities in the domestic market, what would be the supply and demand for these commodities in the international market, what will be the impact of this MSP on the consumers in the market, etc. There are a lot of variable factors or different factors that are considered by CACP, and it will provide the recommendation to Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, which will approve or decide MSP before the sowing season actually starts, before the sowing season begins. Now, in case of the concept of MSP, the prices that are decided right now and announced by the government right now, it is 50% or let's say 150% of cost of production, COP, cost of production. And if you just glance through what has been the announcement of MSP, how much has been the hike in the MSP, different data has been provided. Do not worry, do not by heart this data. UPSC is not going to test you in terms of, let's say, how much percentage hike has been given for this crop, that crop, etc. But what I would recommend to you people is, the idea or the concept of MSP has been one of the favorites in the UPSC preliminary examination. In the last 5 years, at least two questions have come on the idea of MSP. And within MSP, they have asked you the questions on the crops which are covered under the concept of MSP. For example, couple of years ago, list of crops were provided and they asked you which of the following are covered under MSP. And in this year's preliminary examination, civil services preliminary examination, which was conducted very recently, certain crop, that is Niger seed, which is part of the MSP coverage, that was asked in the preliminary examination. So my recommendation to all of you would simply glance by heart, right, all these crops which are listed, which are provided under the coverage of MSP. Now, just glance through this number, do not by heart anything here. What you need to simply observe is, over a period of time, what has been the hike in the amount of MSP has been provided. That is, compared to last year, how much has been the hike in the MSP for different crops has been provided. It is, for some of the crops, it is somewhere around 5%. For some of the crops, it is around 10%. So from one crop to another crop, different percentage of hike has been announced. Now, whenever government announces this percentage of hike in the MSP, they will basically announce it as 150% of cost of production, as already mentioned. Now, what is this 150% of cost of production? This is where there is a lot of discussion. There is a lot of, let's say, the friction between the farmer representatives as well as the government. That is basically the CACP will give recommendation of MSP using certain parameters like I've told you. And when you come across the concept of cost of production, the CACP will calculate cost of production under different methods. We have A1, we have A2, we have B1, B2, C1, C2. We also have A2 plus FL, we have C2 star, and we have C3. Now, in many of the books, this concept is not covered, and even for UPSC examination, this is not required. But what is very often cited in the newspaper are two very important cost of productions. That is A2 plus FL and C2. Right now, Government of India announces MSP that is equivalent to 150% of A2 plus FL. The basic idea of A2 is nothing but whatever input prices that are paid out by the farmer. That is, whenever inputs are purchased, whatever money is paid by the farmer plus imputed family cost labor or family labor imputed cost. Whereas the C2 is much more comprehensive, much more bigger. It covers many more other factors apart from the prices which are paid by the farmers on the input, the family labor imputed cost. It will also include the interest cost on the capital assets that are held, the rental foregone on the land that you are owning or the rent that you have paid. It will include many more other costs or much higher coverage of cost will be there in case of C2 compared to A2 plus FL. And that is the precise reason Swaminathan committee, remember the name of the committee, Swaminathan committee has recommended that Government of India should provide 150% of C2, 150% of C2. Whereas Government of India right now announces 150% of A2 plus FL. And the argument of the farmers is that no doubt Government of India has increased the MSP. No doubt MSP has been increased. But Government of India doesn't procure all the crops. That's a fact. It doesn't procure all the crops which are covered under MSP. So farmers who are cultivating other crops except a few of the crops such as paddy, wheat, right, or cotton, pulses, etc. Pulses procurement is also very limited. Or coarse grains, majority of the procurement that is done by the government is centered around the paddy as well as wheat, because Government of India needs to ensure food security initiatives are implemented. So in order to implement that, whatever is required, they will purchase from the market, plus they will also purchase certain buffer stock. But this is again centered on the concept of cereals. So what about other farmers who are going to cultivate other crops? So don't you think the farmers will be thrown open to the risk of market volatility? Second, no doubt Government of India has announced a hike in the MSP. It has increased the MSP, no doubt. But the concern has been that the input cost in the last couple of years have increased. For example, I'm pretty sure all of you are reading the newspapers where you will see that the cost of inputs such as seeds, etc. have increased over a period of time. Even the labor cost has increased. So again, although the government might have increased it by 5% in some crops or up to 10% in certain other crops, it is not going to cover lot of these hike in the input cost that is experienced by the farmers in the last couple of years. And that is the precise reason many of these farmer organizations are criticizing the Government of India, are asking the Government of India to announce the MSP not on A2 plus FL but rather on C2. So these are certain very important points regarding this article which appeared in Hindu newspaper yesterday, and related to MSP in the last 1 week, many more articles have appeared in many other newspapers. Now, based on the discussion, I have given a question here. Consider the following statements. The government announces MSP just before the harvesting season. No, it is done before the sowing season actually begins. Higher the MSP hike announced may have inflationary impact. Very recently, in the last 1 week, RBI governor has raised certain concerns regarding the hike in the MSP announced by the government. For example, in the last week in Business Standard, there was interview of RBI governor which was published. And RBI governor clearly stated that whenever government announces a hike in the MSP, and if the hike is much higher, it will have inflationary impact in the market. And as far as the latest announcement is concerned, RBI governor estimated that this hike in the MSP will lead to inflationary impact up to 10 to 12 basis points in inflation. So obviously, second statement is correct. Higher MSP might have inflationary impact in the market. CACP approves MSP. Underline the term approves. Approves means decides. Right, so it is not the CACP which will decide MSP, it will recommend MSP. It is the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs which will decide the MSP. So out of all the three statements, only one statement is correct. Right option for the question will be option A, only one statement is correct. Now, if you like these initiatives, please hit the like button, provide your valuable comments in the section below. And if you are yet to subscribe to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS, kindly do it now. Thank you. Have a great day.